This podcast and every podcast is brought to you by Claypot. Claypot is a Cantonese-styled restaurant located at 58 St. Mark's Place in the Big Apple, New York City. You should totally check it out. It has delicious rice that is cooked in a clay pot, and it almost like makes it crispy, so it's kind of like a hash brown. Oh my god, it's so good. And there's eel and pork belly, and it's all just like cooked in a clay pot. Like I said, obviously clay pot, but it's a sealed in. The flavor is all there. Go check it out. It's great. It's quality food. And I'm personally friends with the owner, and his mission statement is to bridge the gap between generations through food. You had me at food. It's there. It's great. Go check it out. Today, my guest is Dylan Wack, and oh my lord, this might be my favorite podcast to date. We get really personal in what the underlying extrapolation from acting and from comedy is. Dylan and I talk about just the human condition, in essence, and I really hope you got as much out of this as I did. So please enjoy. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Dylan C. Wack.
Out there, but I don't want to say it's like a prerequisite, because there is a lot of art made by people who have had really level upbringings and really, have had kind of the luck or the fortune or the privilege or whatever you want to call it to like have sort of a healthy, whatever that wants to mean, like life, and their art is still art, and it's still great, and it's still, whatever it may be, but I feel like there, instead of I will put the like footnote of like, but there does have to be something like missing, or the wiring or something that makes a person want to be like, I'm going to paint. Like, I'm going to spend hours mixing paint together. Or, like, I'm going to stand in front of people and say words that I didn't think of. Like, there's got to be something, like, either there or missing. Because it's a totally irrational thing to think of, like, I've lived my life, and I've had whatever experience, and because of that, I'm going to play the trumpet. Like, those two thoughts do not, like...
Well, I think it's something that's, like, inside you that kind of, like, speaks to you. Like, this for sure is my outlet, you know? It's probably why, like, some people are like, try meditating, doesn't really work. Try yoga, doesn't really work. Try sprinting up a hill as fast as you can. And then, like, for some crazy people, they're like, yup, it works. I guess I'm a marathon runner, you know?
Perfect.
And it's just, like, that passion kind of just, like, strikes you right there, and you're like inside, like, the wedding bell is like, oh, and you're like, exactly. This is it, you know?
That's the thing, and I feel like that is... Maybe that's what it is, rather than, like, having to have suffered, is that there just has to be a part... It's like the part of whatever thing that makes humans tick, that makes you, like, want to find that thing.
Yeah.
And listen to that bell go off in your head. Like, that's what makes people... Like, that same thing that makes people want to try meditating or try yoga or run up the hill is the thing that makes you want to learn how to dance or learn how to act or write or whatever it is. Because I think most people want to do that in some way, whatever the thing is. I think that I see people do that in like 1,000 ways. And, some of them are making memes, and it's like, okay, that's objectively a little stupid, but like, if it makes that bell go off, then like, good for you.
Yeah. Oh my god!
Like, I can't judge you, because if you make the best meme ever, who am I to say, like, well, screw your meme.
Yeah.
Me and Shakespeare over here are gonna have the like moral high ground, because
Yeah.
but it's like it's the same. I feel like it's probably the same part of the brain that like lights up
Yeah.
when you're creating.
So then, for you, what does Shakespeare, or I guess like what acting in general, kind of evoke from you? Like, what is so appealing about the form, and what does the form let you do?
Immediately what I started thinking of was I started acting when I was in like 6th grade. I did the school musical when I was in 6th grade. Let me put it that way. And I was a miserable middle schooler, as I think many people are.
Yeah.
I'm not alone in that experience, but like I just was like, I was a mess. I would like, puberty was awful, and like I didn't know how to dress myself yet, so I was like, I desperately want to be liked by other human people. I want like girls to like me, and at the same time I'm like still wearing like sweatpants and like the same windbreaker jacket every day, because I was like, this is what we did in elementary school, and it's like, you can't do that anymore. And so I signed up to do it, I think because I was no good at sports. I was smart, like I was good in school, but that's not, at least in 6th grade, like that's not really the way that people make friends. I feel like in high school you can maybe like,
He's so smart.
well, yeah,
He can read.
Yeah, it's like no one's impressed by that really. And I could sort of sing, and I had never acted before, and I had never danced before, but like I knew that I could at least sing a song. So I started doing it then, and I basically just never stopped, because it was something I was good at that let me like meet other people, and eventually that's how I like doing just theater sort of led me to comedy, because I was a weird looking like puberty stricken 6th grader, so I was never going to play the romantic lead, but I always played like the old man who was funny, like every time. And so I sort of started doing comedy that way. And so I think it originally started as like, I wanted to meet other people who were doing it. Like I wanted to be friends with the other actors and the other, like the kids who are the techies. And like, I wanted that experience, and I got that experience. And then it sort of eventually shifted into more what I feel like it is now, where like I get to work with an audience, and I love feeling. The two best feelings, I think, are on stage are making an audience laugh, because it's awesome, I think. And the other thing is making an audience just fucking hate you.
Okay.
Just.
I thought you were gonna say make them cry.
No.
No.
And that's great.
You.
If you can do that, that's great. I've been in like 1 or 2 shows where I've made tears come, but like, if you can be, because at least for me, at least at this point in my life, like my audience is like my friends and my family. So if I can make them hate me, I've done something right. And I just because of like the person who I am and whatever else, I've often been put in roles as like an evil dude. I'm always playing the jackass, and like it is wonderful, the feeling of an audience being like, yeah, you're right, we do hate him.
Wow.
It's I think it's a lot of fun.
You get a kick out of that. That's kind of like
I kind of do.
black comedy almost.
A little bit, yeah. There's something, I don't know why, but you can feel like, because if, do you know what, I think it's maybe this, it's the same thing, because if you're if like as an actor, my goal is to be entertaining or to keep people engaged or whatever, and if you're laughing, you're paying attention,
right?
Because you heard the joke, it made sense to you, you laughed. And if you hate someone, it's the same, like,
yeah,
like
you have to devote something.
You have to you care about the person,
yeah.
And like I think it's probably harder to act well enough or do whatever well enough that the audience cares enough about you that they're crying, which is maybe why I like it. It's probably easier to get them to hate you, so yeah. I enjoy that. But I think that's what it is. It's like that feeling of like we the actors are doing something, but you are all part of it too. And if you hate a character on stage, you are part of the play, because you are invested so much that you hate the thing.
Yeah, definitely. So
Do I sound crazy?
No. That like makes sense. You're like really like you're pulling their focus and like honing that almost, you know? Like they have to hate you. Like you stick out to them because your character is just so despicable.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of anyone like saying, "That's my kick. That's what I like. That's what I do."
A large group of strangers doesn't like me very much. That's my thing. That's what it is.
So then, between being the bitter old man who everyone hates,
of course,
and doing comedy,
yeah,
what are some things that like comedy can do that acting can't?
Oh, well, I love them both, and I love them both probably equally.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy, so I perform stand-up and I perform improv comedy. And there's something just different about standing in front of a group of people. Like when I think of stand-up, you're standing up in front of a group of people. Thank you. In front of a group of people, and it's like, this is a tacit understanding that what I'm about to say, whether or not it's true, came from me. And like, I am about to share part of myself, however I distort it to make it funny, or, however I exaggerate it, or whatever it may be. I think it's a little bit more of me personally, versus like, acting, you can, it's using someone else's words, it's someone else's direction, to get a similar, like that same reaction, like try to feel like the audience is there with you. But with stand-up, there's, I don't know if it's like the danger of, it's like, what if I say something offensive and you all turn on me, or like, what if it's just not funny, or whatever.
Bomb.
What if I bomb?
It's just, it sucks, but it happens.
Oh, yeah, it sucks. It sucks so bad. And but there's something about it being self-driven, or it being like, this is the thing that I came up with versus this is what someone else came up with. And it's just, I think it's a little more direct. And there's it's harder to make excuses with comedy than with acting. Because I have been in shows before that, for whatever happened, and I could just be like, oh, well, I was feeling sick, or I didn't really get along with the director, or, the other person dropped their line, or whatever. And there's like a kind of a million ways out.
Sure.
But with comedy, it's like, if it goes well, it's because I did it well. And if it doesn't go well, it's because I didn't do it well. So there's sort of an instant gratification, or an instant, like, slap on the wrist, whatever the opposite of gratification is, of like, I have this thing that I say that I do. Either it goes well or it doesn't, and I know it in the moment. And I guess there's something attractive about that.
Yeah, it's like instant feedback.
Yeah.
And like, based on what you were saying before, it almost sounds like it's a little more honest, because you're actually like putting you up there, and you're not fulfilling the role of someone else, or like. And
some people, I do my stand-up is about, like the things that I will talk about usually are like either my, who I am, whether it's my identity or my family or whatever, things that and then I'll do a little bit of like observational stuff, and I'll do some political stuff. And some people will do comedy that's like, they'll put on a persona, they'll put on a character, and they'll do stand-up that way, which I think is fine, but like I think like I wouldn't be able to do that because I'm an actor, so like I already do that all the time, like putting on this persona, and so for me, I think comedy is that honesty to whatever level. And there's there's parts of it where it's like, I'm just gonna explode that one fact of my life so that it's ridiculous and people laugh at it, whether or not it's true. I don't know. I always wonder, like, I wonder, I don't know how much you, like, if you listen to a lot of comedy, or if that's something that makes that you enjoy.
Yeah, I definitely listen to comedy. I wouldn't say I'm, like, knowledgeable of every single comedian out there,
but if you were, that would be weird. But I want like does it seem honest to you when you watch, like, whoever your favorite comedian is, like, is there?
Well, I would say I gravitate more towards comedians who almost kind of give you like a very real story.
Yeah.
And they explore like the full range of your emotions, because there's like serious moments where they're like, "Oh my God, I need to tell you about this. This is when my father died," and you're like locked in. And then something funny happens, and you're like, "Oh, there it is. It's really..." And it takes you on a roller coaster.
My favorite comedian is Patton Oswalt, who is he's been my favorite comedian for years. I've listened to him since I was like a sophomore in high school, so that was 6 years ago. His wife died very suddenly, like 2 years ago, and he took a little sabbatical. He has a daughter, so he kind of like receded from public life, and then started doing comedy again. First, like in sort of festival circuits and at small clubs, and then he just put out maybe it's a while ago, maybe it's a year ago, put out a new special on Netflix, and it's amazing. And he always was the kind of comedian just like that, where it's like he would talk about some serious stuff and then be really funny about the serious stuff. And the special is great, and it's a really beautiful moment where it's like he's done telling jokes and he's just like, we're going to talk about the thing that we're all thinking about. Yes, my wife died. The only reason I get up in the morning died suddenly, and you all know about it. And it's like this kind of wild moment, because it's like this is the funniest person, and you could, like, it would have been just as easy to cut out those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And have the special just be like
like
absolutely
happy,
funny the whole time. And he like to include that, I feel like, is so amazing.
Well, I think that's something that comedians do, because to be a good comedian, there has to be like some kind of vein that you tap into, like some vein of truth.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just wouldn't be funny. You'd just be like talking random nonsense shit.
Yeah, truly.
So I think that's where the real like hook is when you bring the person in with some kind of like tragedy or some like seriousness. That this is life, but at the same time we can still laugh about it.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't always have to be like that's a
specific type, not everyone does that.
Well, it's a specific type, and I mean there's sort of like that's kind of an extreme example of like my wife died and I'm going to talk to you about it.
Yeah, let's hope not every comedian's wife
truly.
dies.
But they're also like even in the dumber, kind of more shallow things, like there's sort of these like teeny tiny traumas that like are shared universally. And so it's like that, like I think I've done bits before about like being in middle school or being in high school, and it's like because those years kind of sucked for everyone, or like part of it sucked for everyone, and it's not nearly as bad as like my wife died,
right? But
it's still like we can all think back and be like, oh yeah, those years were awful, and now we can laugh about it. If your wife just died and you listen to that set, you might not think it was funny.
Probably not.
You probably wouldn't. But maybe, in a couple of years after some of the healing has started, you'd be able to listen to that and be like, that is so fucking true that, this is part of the experience, and that you can actually laugh at it.
So then, do you see comedy as kind of a vehicle of truth?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I think it's I think it's a vehicle of truth I think it's an important vehicle of truth, both for like a person and for, in certain ways, like a culture. Because I think for people it's an important, it's something I noticed that like, and I do this a lot, that when there's a serious subject or there's something that I don't want to talk about, I'll just make jokes about it. Or I'll sort of like try to make people laugh instead of doing that. And it's because it's not in that moment because I'm trying to be funny or I'm trying to like make people laugh. It's just because I don't want to talk about like that thing.
Yeah.
And so it's in that way for me, it's like that's the way it's a vehicle of truth, of like I know that my reflex kicks in when it's like that's the thing I need to talk about. And so I won't talk about it. I'll make jokes about whatever instead. Yeah. And then at the same time, like I think comedians always try to be truthful, because I think you're like you were sort of saying, like, if there wasn't something behind it just turns into like random bullshit, which has its place, but like you can't listen to that for that long. But you could, there are comedians who you could like listen to and you could talk to for hours, and it's because while being humorous, they're being honest. And then I think culturally, and I think we're in this moment right now where like it seems to be that the whole world is on fire.
Yeah. Oh boy.
That there is genuine, like I look at some comedians, or I look at, like I think it's like the old, the saying, whatever, of like, if you have to laugh, otherwise you'll cry. And it's like, that's our response to that. And we'll make sure that we're talking about the things. It is like when Jon Stewart was still on Comedy Central, and how many people got their news from his show, which is its own set of problems. But like, even if he's making fun of it, he's communicating information. And like, so, there's still late night hosts who, if they have to do 5 shows a week, they can only do jokes about what happened that day.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it's like you are by watching Colbert or Conan or whoever, you are engaging with what happened that day, even if it's in kind of a goofy way. And so I think culturally it becomes a really important thing, especially in times like these where it's like everything is topsy-turvy and no one knows which way is up anymore. If you can laugh about it, that's a good thing. And if you can laugh about it because you're paying attention to it, I think those are both like ways that comedy is keeping us all honest. Is that the joke only works if you're paying attention to it. So I don't know.
No, that definitely makes sense. So we can definitely see comedy as this vehicle of truth, whether that's, like a personal truth, or if that's like a political message, like news, right? Just given to people, so it's a little more lighthearted, and we don't have to really think about like, oh my god, nuclear war is actually going to break out between us and North Korea. Like nobody wants to think about that.
No, I don't.
So
you are correct.
We just laugh at like the little tweets between our president and
whoever the fuck else it is.
Yeah, whoever the fuck else it is. But
whichever dog that has a Twitter he's decided to pick on.
Twitter fingers, tiny Twitter fingers.
Tiny Twitter fingers.
So so if that is the case, that like comedy is this vehicle of truth, what truth are you attempting to share with the world?
Wow.
Loaded.
Yeah, loaded. I love it. There's something about this is just kind of immediately what comes to mind. Because I talk a lot about, like, I am fairly personal with my act. With the rare exception, in an election year, I'll do more political stuff because it tends to be a little bit easier in an election year to do it. But a lot of my stuff is personal, and a lot of my stuff comes from I would hope that like people would hear, someone I either know or wouldn't know would hear and would feel like there's someone else who had whatever experience. Because I think, especially nowadays, and I'm going to sound like a grandpa for a second.
No.
Like, Instagram, I love Instagram.
Me too.
Go follow me. I love it, but it is exclusively, like, here's me when I look my best, when my hair is perfect, when I'm doing the cool thing, and you never hear anything about the bank account balance is 0, and I haven't heard from whichever family member in forever, and like, there is part of like our humanity that is being muted by, here's this picture of me smiling with all of my friends. And that is good for Instagram and it's bad for comedy. Like, you can't have a joke about like, here's this perfect day I spent. The perfect day has to be ruined at some point in the joke. You know, you can't just talk about, I went to the beach and it was a beautiful sunny day. At some point, like, a naked dude has to walk through. It has to happen. And I think that by doing that, whether it's about, even if it's that simple, it's like someone else can hear that and go, oh, it's not just my day at the beach that's been ruined. Like, other people have had their day at the beach, walked out, like, had a naked guy walk through. And I guess that's sort of what I would try to do. And you know, when I've talked about in sets, like I talked about like with the middle school and the high school thing, it's like, no, it's okay to still be embarrassed about what you were doing 5 years ago. We were all thinking about that. There's still a part of me that's like, what was I thinking when I was a freshman in high school and I was doing all that stupid shit? And like, by talking about it, just by saying it there, I hope there's someone else who's like, oh, thank God, me too. About whatever it may be.
Well, you can get that reaction immediately, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's funny. Yeah, I completely relate to it.
But then, there's the part of it that's funny, and then there's something either calming or like whatever it is, of like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I think that's part of what comedy is like, not like an affirmation for an audience of like, we're all in this together. Like, the world is crazy, we're not.
Yeah. It's that, oh, I'm not the only one who feels this too? Cool,
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
Same.
And you hear an audience, if you're sitting in the audience and you hear the rest of the audience laugh, it's like, oh my God, I thought I was crazy for thinking whatever about whatever, and everyone else just laughed, so we're all on the same boat. We're all on the same page about, you know. That's why like comedians, like you can go through and like, there's always talk about marriage, there's always talk about kids, there's always talk about being in love, there's always talk about dating, because like, those are just things where like shit goes wrong constantly, and so people can sit and laugh about it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's not happening to me in this very second. Right now I'm sitting in a theater and listening to stand up, but like, I can think of the time when it's like, oh yeah, you're right, that is crazy, or like, yeah, I was stood up on a first date, whatever, and it's like, it's not just happening to me. There's like, I feel like comedy is sort of a reminder that there is humanity all around us, and it's not just like Instagram smiles.
Yeah, I fuck with that. That's
Yeah. I try not to sound like a grandpa, but I love and hate social media.
No, I definitely feel.
Just is like, I can't wait for, I'm sure my kids will have like a major in like the history of Instagram, and it's like, here's how humanity used to look, and now
the puppy filter was the most popular filter.
I mean, like a whole generation. And I think I only have this perspective. I have a younger sister who is 7 years younger than me. So we are of different generations.
Yeah, I know, because my brother's 6 or 7 years older than me.
Yeah, and it's like it's enough of a difference.
Yeah, but I don't think people don't realize that, like, when like one of you gets into high school, the other one's already gone.
Yeah,
like, you don't get to see your sibling; they don't exist outside of the home. It's weird.
It's really crazy. But I've watched a person grow up younger than me, and like always have Instagram and always have Twitter and always have that shit, and always have like a phone. Like, I remember it was the biggest deal in the world when I got a Nokia brick phone. Like,
hot shit.
I was on top of the world. I was like, oh, you need to see what time it is? Let me check my Nokia phone. It's like the ugliest thing I have ever owned, and like. So for me, like, I'm totally engrossed in it all. I'm on all of the social medias. I'm on it all the time. I'm awful about it. But like, there's still a part of me that remembers that I can put it down and like exist.
Yeah.
And I'll be fine. And like, not that my sister is exactly like this, but like, I have seen either her exhibit this or people her age just sort of like not be able to understand what it's like to not have to Instagram something or not have to share it immediately.
Well, I almost kind of feel bad for people who are like the Instagram generation, because it almost feels like the number of followers is kind of like your popularity stock, and it's not like really something that in our generation you kind of feel like, oh, this guy's kind of popular. I think he's popular. Yeah, he's a cool guy, you know.
Yeah.
Now it's like 260 followers, 1,400 followers, 20, 30,000 followers. Like there's an immediate stock, and you're like, this guy's the popular guy. That's a loser, and I think that really fucks with people.
Yeah.
I think that really fucks with people, and I think that like
it's putting a number to some like an actual like numerical value.
Black Mirror as fuck.
It's Black Mirror as fuck. It really is.
But it's also just like to have a successful Instagram, it almost feels like kids today need to almost have like their personal brand figured out, Like you need to know your aesthetic, you need to know your filters, you need to know like your angles and everything. And like when you're 14, you don't have your brain is so totally far from being done.
If I had to pick my brand when I was 14, I'd be fucked. I'd be absolutely destroyed. And I feel like everyone would be in a certain way. Because it's like you should not be making any choice when you are 14 years old that defines anything about you for any period of time. Like I'm glad that almost without fail, every decision I made when I was 14 has been reversed or been proven wrong at some point.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope.
Like there's not, that if I went and
But it's just like that actually like concerns me because I mean I don't know if you know, but like I majored in neuroscience. I sound like a fucking pompous asshole every time I do this, but majored in neuroscience, and like psychologically we're only evolved to track about 200 people.
Yeah.
So you can really keep track of like what happens in like 200 of your friends' lives, friends and family.
Yeah.
And that's why like people who have like 1,000 friends it's kind of hard to like you don't really know what goes on with everyone's life. It's too much information. You got your own shit going on. And you think about that, and now suddenly people are connected, and you have this network of like I don't know how many people are on the internet, like 3 billion, 4 billion, and you have to like distinguish yourself when you're like 12, 14. That's really fucking hard. You don't have an identity yet,
and it's scary. And it's to me scary. The part that like, and I don't know. It's probably not for all kids, and it's probably not for maybe this is just nonsense, but that like you should be figuring out who you are as a person in that age, and truly like for the rest of our lives we should always be trying to figure out like what is it about me that makes it me. And if you're worried about how that works on the internet, like your internet persona is its own thing, but that there might be if there's one kid out there who is worried about their internet persona before they're worried about their like own personhood, like that's horrifying.
I think there's a lot of that.
Oh, I'm sure. And I think it's really unfortunate. Because, I know I would go so far as to say that, like, I was able to sort of become a person before I had to become an internet person. And so there's, that like finding theater, finding comedy, finding all of those things I was able to do before I was, like, doing it for the Vine. And, like, there are kids who don't have that luxury. And they, it's I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the people 10 years younger than we are go through the world.
So then, would you say that your internet persona and your real life persona are somewhat divorced?
Well, there's certainly part of it is divorced of like if you go through my Instagram, there like it's the happy moments. I'm not taking the picture of like, here's what it looks like when I'm up at 3 a.m. doing homework, like, because no one wants to see that. And like sometimes that's just part of my week. And then it's interesting. Like on the one hand, I feel like I'm not super into the internet persona, and then I feel like I have 9 internet personas because I've like the Facebook is mostly for my family who are from far away, and it's just like, here's what I'm doing, Grandma. I promise that like I'm still alive and okay. And then like Instagram is more like my immediate friends. I feel like that's sort of the social media that like most of like the BU students or college students are like on right now. And then like Twitter is just sort of like the void that I don't know if anyone's listening to. So my Twitter feed is just fucking ridiculous because it's just like the thought that pops in at 2 a.m. and is like, here it is. I promise I won't edit it. So it'll have grammatical errors in it. Which isn't really answering the question. I mean, I guess it has to be. Because like the personas have to be divorced, because if I was as happy and as successful and as whatever as my social media would like make me look, I'd be fucking crazy. And like I feel like people need to be able to have their minute where they're not feeling good, or you're not a real person.
So then what do you think the repercussions are if you put your real self on like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter?
I mean, it sounds and like to even say it out loud is to like I feel gross even thinking it. But it's like, well, you just won't get as many likes and you won't get as many favorites. It's like, that's thinking of my personal, like the part that I think I leave out from the internet is the like, darker side or the part of my day that isn't going so well and I don't think deserves to be photographed. It would probably, honestly, two things. It would be probably less likes, like fewer, positive engagements.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably also mean, just knowing who my friends are, more people reaching out and being like, hey, are you okay? Hey, is everything all right? And it's not that that's a bad thing, but for some reason I wouldn't want that to come from the internet. Which is, even thinking about that is like kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that would make sense of like, if you were having a rough day and you posted it and people came out and were like, hey, what's up? How are you doing? Like, wouldn't that be a good thing? I don't know. Maybe there's something that feels needy about that?
Maybe. But, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's definitely something that's kind of lacking and doesn't have an outlet in mainstream media.
Definitely not.
Like, people feel shameful when they put up things that are, like, not positive and not smiles. And, I mean, personally, I kind of hate that, as you can tell, Like, just because, like, how we were talking before the podcast, I very much disagree with the idea that you have to be always happy to be a complete person.
Yeah.
And so I'm like wholeheartedly wishing you best of luck in acting and comedy, because you can show that. You can show that there's not just like comedy. It's also the hook. It's the hey, let's be real. Let's talk about the things that like matter, like marriage and children and the difficult things, but like integral towards your life, and almost like those things that give you the biggest obstacles are also the ones that give you the most meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of what you get. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I think it's what I'd like to believe, and I'm not sure I am the perfect example of this, but, like, it's not the challenge in your life. It's not the obstacle. It's how you respond to the obstacle that makes you the person you are. And it's, I think of, like, those kids in Parkland, where it's like, okay, there's this huge obstacle that has been thrust upon all of you, but none of you could have seen coming. And their response has been, we're going to organize a national movement to try to make this world better. And it's like, I feel like that is a perfect example of, like, they had an obstacle and their response is what is defining them. And that, like, no matter what else happens here on out, just the mere fact that, like, they chose to respond with, we're going to make a change for the good, is helping define them as good people.
And you can definitely see that in the interviews with like they're like high school kids,
Yeah.
right? And you can see the seriousness they have in their speech. And it really, like, that kind of seriousness is something that, like, even people 25, 30 would be afraid to say. But
Yeah.
you know, when something like that happens, it really hits that vein between people.
Yeah.
And
I feel like they're daring to be, like, or demanding to be taken seriously, which I think is really hard for young people to do.
yeah, it is.
And I mean, particularly people that young, but even, you know, even older than we are, can often be just like, you don't know anything yet. You're too young to know anything.
I mean, like, even we kind of almost had that kind of tinge where it's like, oh my god, these kids, like, they're on Instagram and they're not, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
hard, but I mean, when there's this tragedy like that, I think at the end of the day, when there's a tragedy that's either a school shooting, you know, God forbid, or your wife dying out of the blue, again, God forbid, there's something about that just, like, rings true across all ages, and you just understand it at a human level.
Yeah.
And that's something that's just, like, it's a call to action. It's like, this is not okay, and something needs to be done. And I think that's the big question that our generation kind of faces. And I don't mean just, like, strictly with like school shootings or with, like, racism or any kind of, you know, hot political topic, but I mean just in general with your every average day Joe who's just having passive nihilism through his life. It's something that we all feel, and I feel like that's something that comedy and theater and movies and TV and, you know, that general sphere kind of expresses in a way that is like, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people gravitate towards stories, because it's the stories that really bind us together as a species.
Definitely. I think that's well said. And
I will never say anything that good ever again for the rest of my life. That's it. I've hit my peak, guys. I lost my stride.
You should stop
It's
listening.
all downhill now. Look at his hairline.
Oh, no. No, that's great. You have a lovely hairline.
Let's hope, because, you know, once I shave this off, I'm going to look like a thumb.
That's not true.
But I guess, like, the main takeaway, or what I would like to know is, what is the, like, underlying raw truth that you're trying to convey through your art? And it almost sounds like, and I don't want to, like, steer you in a direction, but it sounds like it's like the human connection between you and the audience. It's the reassurance that, hey, we're all people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's 50%, like 50-50 between, like, your own, like, cathartic, you know, venting of your trauma when you were wearing, like, gymboree clothes at 6th grade or something, or if it's also just like, you know, I went through a divorce too.
I personally, I think it definitely comes down to human connection. But I think you're spot on, and that all art, whether it's performing art or it's like, I'm going to paint you something, you know, at some point it has to do with, like, another person experiencing that. For me, I would hope that the two things that people would listen to or pay attention to or whatever is like we were saying, and like you just said, that you're not alone, that someone else has had this experience that you've had, and that it's okay to laugh at it, and that, you know, you take the time that you need to take to experience whatever thing you're experiencing it, but that, you know, you have 80 years, you know, maybe 100 years to live a life, and that obviously taking the serious things as seriously as they need to be taken, but that we don't need to dwell in whatever funky thing there is in our life or from our experience, and that it's okay to point and laugh at the thing once it becomes goofy, so that you can then ride off and not be worrying about, you know, the embarrassing clothes I wore in middle school, and I can more fully live my life now, knowing that it's like, it's fine that that's funny. Like, it's okay that that at the time was so like traumatic and was like, this is the end of the world, that I'm a loser in middle school, can eventually become the thing of like, we can all laugh and then move on together.
Yeah. I think that's a part of growing up, is realizing that you're really not alone.
Yeah.
And that a part of growing up is learning where your place is in the social structure and how you socialize with your friends, your families, your peers, your students, and really just finding your place, and that you do have a place.
Yeah. And that's something I teach as that would be like my day job, as I would describe it. And like, being able to teach theater is really awesome, because I get to see the kids who find their place. Like, I teach like kids as young as 8 and as old as 17, and like, watching these people, these very young people, like, find their place is so gratifying. Even if it has nothing to do with me, and it's just like, my other friends are here, and it's so fun to do this shit. Like, it's really cool, because that place exists for everyone somewhere, I think.
And so, through teaching and through comedy and through acting, do you believe that you can change the world?
Well, I guess the answer is yes, with the sort of footnote to that being, I do believe that changing the world in small ways, if you're doing it for the better, or for good, or, you know, however you want to qualify it, is still changing the world. And so I think of, you know, excuse me, like, I think of the kids who are happy doing theater, and if that becomes a thing that helps them not even be like a successful person, but just be a happier person, then it's like, yes, the world has been changed in some way. And I think that, like, I don't think it is exclusive to the performing arts. Like, I think, you know, like what are the small things that we all do for each other, where it's like that you if you've made someone else's day better, you've changed the world, even if it's in the smallest way possible, you know.
Yeah,
it still counts.
I definitely agree with that. I think there's not enough emphasis on the micro.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you wouldn't characterize your relationship as the dozen of roses you bought for your wife, or the chocolates you got on her birthday, but by how you would greet her every morning at breakfast.
Exactly.
And I think that if people just made those teeny tiny adjustments and just like help the lady who dropped her license, or, you know, held the door open for the guy who was obviously in a mess and in a hurry, that we might be able to piece the world back together.
I do, like, yeah. I think that, like, theater and comedy and education is maybe a different category, but like, but like, theater is never gonna like fix world hunger.
Well,
you know, we've been.
You don't know that, because
I mean,
there's power to stories. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, definitely. But I don't think. I think maybe in some ways there could be big changes like that come from performance or storytelling or whatever, but like, there's not going to be a production of Hamlet so good that suddenly like peace in the Middle East is achieved.
Bitch, you don't know that.
You are right. Maybe we should try it. We haven't tried it yet. Maybe that's the thing that we've been missing.
An all Dylan cast of Shakespeare would
God.
solve world hunger.
Because everyone would unite and say, that was bullshit. Let's focus on the...
I hate that guy.
I hated that. Let's focus on the real issues at hand. No. I'm not sure that it can be... Those monumental shifts can be changed in those ways. I think it has to be more culture. Like, it has to come from multiple places. But... it is so easy and cheap to be kind to other people. It is so easy. And then it's also so hard because you have to live your own life, and there's something about being a human. I don't know what it is, but there's just I don't know if you ever experienced this, but there's that one person who it's like they've just been annoying long enough. Where if they breathe the wrong way, it's like, are you fucking kidding me with this today? You have to breathe out loud, honestly? Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be that intense. And so it's on the one hand, it's so easy to be kind, and it's so easy to pay attention to the part of how do you greet your significant other in the morning versus what do you do for Valentine's Day.
It's easier to be negative, yeah.
But it's easier to be negative, and it's easier to have the people who I think it's easy to be kind, but it's hard to be kind to the people that in my experience, it's harder to be kind to the people who I've already decided don't deserve my kindness. Or who not don't deserve, but who have wronged me in some way, and so it's no, I'm going to be less kind to you. I think of I'm very close with my roommates, and so it's very easy to be kind with them, and it's very easy to if someone's having a bad day, to go get them a drink or to help make dinner or whatever the small thing is. But then there's people who it's we just don't click, and so I'm not going to put in that effort. That's such a little effort of holding the door open or helping pick up the stuff when it's going all over the place. And I don't know why that's hard, but it just or what about that makes it I can't take that away for a moment. Yeah, I don't know if that, maybe I am alone in that one.
No, I definitely feel the same sentiment. So then, if you could tell the world one lesson, what would it be?
While you are remembering others, remember yourself. And that it's easy, I think, to, both in the positive and in negative ways, to see other people, to be with other people, to judge other people, whatever the verb is, without keeping yourself as part of the equation. And so I think that is part of what makes it, I think that's part of what makes people really selfish in a way, in kind of a backwards way of they aren't paying attention to how they are being selfish, and so it's easy for them to be selfish because they're not, paying attention. And it's how people let themselves get trod over, is because they're not paying attention to the fact that they aren't being present with another person. And I think that's hard. I think it's really difficult.